Coming up on the Talking Truth podcast. This is how I remember the conversation. Within a 1 minute time period of you telling me, no, I'm not a one, there were like three things that I'm like, yeah, I think you're one. So just the theme of acceptance, I think, is very central to oneness.
I never thought about that, but when I think of ones and when maybe I first understood the Enneagram or that you were talking about it, it just felt like someone very inflexible. And it's like, I don't want to be that person. But the ultimate, and I'll stop, but like the ultimate inner part of me, like I want to be helpful. Like I want to be thinking about other people and not think about myself.
Is Holly a two-wing one or a one-wing two kind of thing? I think we've both established that you're that area. And I kind of want to
I just don't like the oneness. I mean, reading these, honestly, I'm like, no, maybe one's not so bad. But
yeah, maybe one's not. That's the title of the podcast.
Maybe one's not
so bad. Hi, welcome to episode 6 of Talkin Truth. In this one, I interview a friend, bandmate, and professional addiction counselor, Holly, aiming to resolve a long-standing, lighthearted disagreement that we've had over whether she's a two-wing one or a one-wing two. Now, like a lot of people, Holly has taken multiple tests and gotten different results, but she most strongly identified with the helpfulness and caring about others associated with being a type 2. However, I've long felt that she's more so a one-wing two, a person who has strong values and ideals that in this case are two-like, but is nonetheless more fundamentally a one, a type striving to and concerned with whether or not they're living up to those values and ideals, rather than being primarily motivated by being loved and appreciated. Anyhow, according to the Enneagram Institute, female ones can often mistype as twos. And at the beginning of this podcast, I felt that Holly was selectively focusing on the good and healthy parts of two and the unhealthy aspects of one. So throughout it, I kind of tried to tip the scales in the other direction, contrasting some of the unhealthy aspects of two with some of the virtues of one. So this podcast is really going to go over some of the similarities and defining differences between ones and twos. We talk about their connection to point 4, something that both types share but tend to access and experience in different ways, and how, in this case, it relates to the music of Taylor Swift. We also talk about sensitivity to criticism and feedback, childhood messages, and pivotal shaping experiences, and how ones and twos' core values manifest differently in social dynamics and relationships. There's also a really good discussion about addiction, therapy, restrictive eating, and pleasure that I think really highlights some of the thematic tensions between points 1 and 7 and how 4, commonly thought of as one's disintegration point, can help resolve that. So there's a lot to get out of this one. I'm excited about this episode. And if you're looking to understand some of the 1-2 dynamics in yourself or someone that you know, this is going to be a good one. But also, if you're more familiar with the Enneagram, chime in with your thoughts about Holly's type and what aspects of our conversation led you to that conclusion. Because perhaps the only way to really settle this disagreement once and for all is to enlist the help of the objective strangers of the internet. So share your thoughts and let's get started. All right, welcome to the Talking Truth podcast. We got another type interview episode today, and today we are joined by my friend Holly Marie.
Hello.
All right, welcome. This is kind of the third in the segment of band interview series, so excited to get your...
Lots of band stories.
Yes, excited to get your perspective on things, and I gotta say I like the kind of how each type and each person has brought a very different interview style thus far. That, you know, whether they say the right thing or not in their eyes, I think it's still useful and reflective of the Enneagram principles anyway. So we started off with Chris, who, said, I'm a 6, I get it. And I'm like, I agree.
Wait, is he a 6 or a 9?
6.
Oh, I guess he is. Okay.
And that was the gist of the conversation. And, interestingly, he really kind of took to the Enneagram. So, like, he really got in. I introduced him to it. He really got into it. Then we had Alan, who was more an 8, where he's like, yeah, I get that I'm an 8, but, like, I haven't, like, super gotten into the Enneagram.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you can tell me more about it. Or, like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to apply it or where to even start
Is
with
that
it
an
kind
8
of thing.
thing?
I made the case that it could be because a big topic of ours was how, he was action oriented, go, go, go. And he didn't, until kind of the band dissolved, take the time to sit back and reflect because he was just in this cycle of action. So
Yeah.
I do think and that's where, he could feel bad that he didn't know the Enneagram coming to this interview, but I think it was perfect because I actually did a video after the podcast.
Oh.
Which reminds me, I forgot the one thing I was going to say. Talkin Truth podcast, we, if you want the video version of this, we're on YouTube or Spotify, YouTube at Elliot Killian. And as I was saying here, I was inspired after that long-form interview with Alan to take some clips from that and then do a more in-depth explanation of some Enneagram stuff. So,
break it down.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we'll get one of those out of this one too.
Oh, I'm sure.
So anyway, back to that. That's kind of the directions that some of our other band member podcasts have gone in. So what's your general familiarity with the Enneagram? Do you use it a lot? Or are you just kind of familiar with it? And what's your type, if you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm a therapist. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and I work with addiction too. So I like personality tests. I think it tells a lot about like your motivations and like what drives people. I would say I'm pretty familiar with the Enneagram, but I also could say because I've listened to the recent episodes, so I probably like have a better picture of like, because I don't think I could ever really say what like a 4 was or like a 5, and that's probably because I've taken the Enneagram test a couple times, and I know that you don't like the tests, which is fine. But it's funny because when you had told all the band members what types they were, you were like, you are a 1, like you are a 1, you cannot be anything other than a 1. And I got a 2, but I was like, I think it was a 2 wing 1. So like I definitely had 1 parts of me, but I think if I was talking to you just about different things happening in my life, some really not good, but just feeling like I have no control over anything. So I think some of the oneness is, I don't want to say gone, but like I'm not as like, oh, it has to be perfect or whatever. But like, the thought of my hair, like, being all weird for this entire video, like stresses me out a little bit. Like I don't like that, but
all right.
That's okay. Did I answer the question?
That was just my, yes, concisely. Is that do you not know your type? Are you saying you're a 2 wing 1? Are you saying you're maybe a 1 wing 2? Or what's your, if we have to fit you in the box, and I know people don't like being fit in the box.
Oh, I don't mind boxes. Like it's organized. Anyway.
Just play up the cliches. All right.
So I got a 2 the first time I took it, which is like the helper, which makes sense. Like therapy. I like to help people. But at different points, and it's like, it's interesting because if we had done this interview like a week ago, I was all down or not like in a great mood. So I feel like this interview would have been different because right now it's like, oh, I just had this lovely little family weekend in Texas and it was great. And so I'm in a good mood today. And I had like a little, whatever. Where am I going with that? Anyway, I've taken the Enneagram test at different points in my life. Like there was one time during COVID and I wasn't doing well. And I remember I got like an 8. I got a little bit of a 3. Like I don't know if I'd taken different ones or if I was just looking at like the percentage of what my scores were saying. But I had a little bit of 7, which made sense because like enthusiastic or whatever. And then 8, like I can be really pushy. And then when like politics and everything was so heavy during COVID, I could like be really combative with that. But then 3, the achiever, like I feel like recently it's like, ooh, what's that next challenge? So maybe I feel a little bit of that 3 in me.
Relating to a lot, But
the ultimate, and I'll stop, but like the ultimate inner part of me, like I want to be helpful. Like I want to be thinking about other people and not think about myself. Because like, I really don't like being selfish, but I can find myself like self-involved or how do I look or whatever. And it's like, I ultimately want to, be helping people. But that's not always the case.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I mean,
that's my answer.
We have to be concerned about ourselves too at some point.
Yeah. I was just talking to someone who is Indian, and we were talking about like collectivism versus like individualistic cultures and how differently we look at like family and our roles in our lives. So just it's always good to remember like how differently people live and see the world.
For sure. So I think you brought up a couple interesting points there. One being you took a fair amount of tests and got a fair amount of results. So what was the and that would be one of the arguments that I make against tests is that depending on your mood, depending on the test you take, you're going to get all these different results. And then it can leave you in a state of worse confusion than if you just kind of started the intuitive path towards relating to, well, what's actually my deep core motivation, or what are my deep values? Because sometimes I think tests become a distraction away from those questions, which, arguably point more towards your Enneagram type anyway. So maybe can you speak a little more to what that process of, I'm getting all these different test results, but and they contradict each other. So eventually, like, what do you do after that? Or how do you kind of describe to coming to, okay, what's actually fundamentally true about me, and being able to then discard some of this test information that suggests I'm this type or I'm that type?
Well, I wouldn't say it like gave me any distress of like, oh, wait, what does this mean? Like, I like to think all of us are complex, right? And so maybe that's a good thing that I was able to see myself in other types. And I know that you talk about like, well, how do we grow in other areas? Like, but when I saw that I had like an 8, I was like, oh shit. But I think I like the Myers-Briggs because I've taken that so many times and I've always gotten the same answer. So maybe that is why I've like not clung to it, but like felt more connected and had a really like strong sense of like, this totally makes sense. The protagonist is the name for ENFJ.
Okay.
And I've always gotten ENFJ turbulent, not assertive, which I was reading because that's the one part of it that I don't always understand, but the turbulent versus the assertive. The turbulent is typically like more perfectionistic, like in comparison, and can get in like negative headspaces, versus like assertive can be more optimistic. And while I think I'm optimistic, whatever. Anyway, but that could be connected to.
Is that kind of I'm not super familiar with Myers-Briggs, and I'm particularly not familiar with the turbulent or assertive. Is that a more recent kind of add-on by like some I know there's like this objective personality thing that is kind of taking the Myers-Briggs and then adding a lot to it. So is that turbulent versus assertive? Is that kind of a new theoretical addition by somebody, or?
I should maybe know that, but I don't. I don't know. But if you're not, do you know like the letters? It's like extroverted.
Yeah. I know that much. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, okay. So where to go with this?
Oh, I hope I didn't sound like a little know-it-all. I'm like,
no, all good. Let's go there right away. It's been a source of a little back and forth on our parts, whereas I have felt that I think you might be a 1.
Oh, okay.
So
1v2.
1v2. I think we'll have maybe a little healthy back and forth. I have some stories to share that I want to.
Oh no. Okay.
Make my point with.
No, I'm sweating. Oh gosh.
But let me first ask you this, just to get to know you a little better and share that.
See how much of a 1 you are. Okay.
Yeah. Let me try to lean these questions to get the exact answer that I want. No. All the other members were former bandmates that we had. We're still bandmates, not in the old band.
Well, we're new bandmates.
We're new bandmates
recently,
in a new project. And do you want to introduce what that project is?
Oh, little shameless plug, Taylor and the Anti-Heroes.
Okay.
I'm so weird looking at the camera. I'm like, oh, should I look at you? What I meant to do at that time.
That's fine.
Okay.
So all right. So it's a Taylor Swift tribute band, right? And I think that everyone. And you're Taylor, right? So, okay, you're Taylor.
But I'm not wearing a blonde wig. I like the music. I can sing her range.
That's what I want to get into. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that people might want to start a Taylor Swift project, tribute, cover band. And there's a lot of different.
Just kidding.
Well, that is one of them. So what is it about? What does she like represent to you? Why did you want to go do this project? And what resonates with you, or what? Yeah, what's the interest? What's the motivation?
Wow. I can be like I'm an emotional person. I guess I can be dramatic, and I have had heartbreaks like many have. And I mean, I grew up with her. I love seeing these artists, like even Beyonce. It's like she was famous in the 90s and she's still like top of the charts. And Taylor's obviously younger, but like I remember listening to the early songs. And then as time goes on, and it's like we're also close in age. So maybe being able to relate to her music at like different points in my life and being more connected to it, because it's not like this person that's 15 years older than me or 10 years younger than me. And it's hard to describe other than like just the vibe. I mean, obviously she's popular. Like it felt like a smart thing to do in the time of like, hey, obviously people are really into Taylor. So if there's so many followers, like this could be an easy thing to sell.
Okay.
But I am so emotionally driven, and that's been, you know, a point of contention sometimes of like, I want to like feel the song that I'm singing. Like I want to feel this and be in it and like know, oh my gosh, I remember when I first heard that song, or like I was so sad about this boy or whatever. And what's funny is with All Too Well, so like obviously that was famous later, but I was going to sing that song like at this like little neighborhood party. But then I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. Like no one knows this song. And that was like probably 10 or 11 years ago, and it maybe even longer. I don't know when the date was, but it's like, and now I'm singing this 10-minute version. But yeah, I've definitely connected to her music, and also my range is similar, so it felt like this makes a lot of sense. Like I can sing, I have a good mix, which is that kind of like lower, higher, and I can get that mid-range pretty well. So I don't know if that answers the questions, but I do really like her writing, like a lot of respect for the musicianship.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's the obvious reason. She's popular. It's a good business decision, but I'll add my own spin to it, and you can tell me if you think this is fair.
Okay.
I definitely think, interesting, because the topic is here is, you know, kind of like, is Holly a two-wing one or a one-wing two kind of thing? I think we've both established that you're that area. And
yeah.
I kind of want to
I just don't like the oneness. I mean, I think that's why it's like, yeah.
Well, you know, one of my first YouTube shorts I put was remarking on and observing how, in my experience, there's certain types who are more likely to be like, oh yeah, that's me. And there's certain types who are like, no, I'm not that type.
Oh,
and in my experience, it is actually a one thing to be hesitant and kind of rejecting of that. Whereas there are certain types who kind of like to reject the Enneagram in general. And say, I don't like that concept. I don't like that idea. Ones generally, in my experience, don't do that. They just reject the idea of being ones, which I think if you take the one thing to the extreme, you know, it's this type who has this moral concern, this concern for integrity and values. So just as a whole worldview, these themes of improvement versus acceptance is like the whole like many of the narratives surround that. So I find it interesting, even on the personality level of typing. So acceptance, like, is just, you know, if we did our vision board or type board and like put words and labels and pictures on it, like acceptance would be kind of, I think, one of the key themes of the one energy. So I find it interesting that even on the personality typing level, that theme of acceptance, I think, plays out. But anyway.
So like ones, well, like you said, but acceptance is part of the oneness?
There is this interesting dichotomy of striving to be moral, to live out your values. And with that comes difficulties in accepting yourself when you fall short of those values or ideals, or accepting others when they fall. So this theme of acceptance and when to improve and strive, or even in the world, when to, you know, accept that things aren't perfect, but when to put a foot down and say, I get that things are perfect, but we got to stop pretending like this problem doesn't exist, kind of thing. So just the theme of acceptance, I think, is very central to oneness.
I never thought about that, but when I think of ones, and when maybe I first understood the Enneagram or that you were talking about it, it just felt like someone very inflexible. And it's like, I don't want to be that person.
Sure.
Even though, like, honestly, I oftentimes like people I would probably assume to be ones in some
Okay,
capacity, but
okay.
like my mom is probably a one, but like
right.
it's like the minute I get home, oh, let's clean out your closet. Like let's, like, oh, well, what time are you coming home? Like I need to know.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, I think about some of like exes that maybe met my parents and then were like, oh, like now I can like understand some of these
This
like
makes
quirks.
sense. Yeah, okay.
And, like even I was on a trip with my parents this weekend and I was like, oh, you start to pick up on things that like you didn't maybe notice or were perceptive of before.
Fair enough. All right. I'm trying to think if there's a tangent there. I want to return to the Taylor thing, but all right.
Taylor, oneness, acceptance.
Well, interesting. I was saying if I can make some observations and try to tie some things together. And I was going to say, okay, like there's maybe the 3 motivation, like for the Taylor thing, like, oh, she's popular. If we do it, we'll be popular kind of thing. But I think a lot of the stuff that you touched on, like really kind of emotionally relating to her, I'm emotionally a person. I hear a lot of, and I think this is accurate, that a lot of the inspiration for you in this Taylor project, I've heard you say authenticity is important. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you said it in this or just in the band stuff, but I feel like there's a very strong 4 connection where you, like, again, you don't just want to play the hits, you want to play the 10-minute All Too Well, and you want to play these songs that have...
It is a hit, but...
Well, yeah, if you're deep down the Swiftie bandwagon, it's a hit. But, that's, if you're just the casual radio person, I'm not sure that it's on your radar or not. So, but anyway, so I was going to say, I think it's fair to say that there's a strong amount of like foreignness that is attracting you to Taylor Swift in this project, and the storytelling and the emotionality.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about our little 1-2 thing is that both 1 and 2 are connected to 4. So that's not, so to say that you're kind of attracted to this project and the ideal of Taylor Swift for her emotionality and her ability to convey stories about emotions, in and of itself kind of doesn't necessarily speak to 1 or 4, because both are connected. But I'll say this, when I think of the 2 to 4 connection, let's go from this. I think of 2s as more of, okay, they can be very people-pleasing, very kind of totally neglecting to care for themselves. So I think to them, 4 represents self-care a lot more, and just like finding interests or hobbies that aren't just relational, where they can recharge themselves and kind of go within. And when I think of the 1 to 4 connection, I think of 1s being kind of idealed and principled, and then kind of struggling with maybe showing emotions, expressing emotions, in part because those ideals can bring up anger. It's like, I don't want to express anger. So when I think of 4s, I think less of retreating into myself for self-care, the 1 to 4 connection, and I think more of like emotional expression and learning compassion for even people I might consider enemies or adversaries or that kind of thing. So I don't know. Does any of that resonate, or am I stretching? Or
well, I don't think so. I mean, you obviously know more than I do about Enneagram, but I think about the reason that I like Taylor in these songs is because I've emotionally connected to them, and that's like how I want to do it too. It's like, obviously I'm not the writer of the music, but like,
yeah,
is that connected to what you're saying about like the 2s? Like I want to like connect with people emotionally. It's just like, Mike might be worried about tickets, and I'm like, oh my God, but I just like want them to feel it and like love it so much that's how we grow versus like, oh, we have a better promo, like.
Yeah. Which has brought up, you said, Mike, that has brought up some tensions or some controversies, right? You have
we talk too much.
So where to go from there? Yeah, for example, Mike was, the singer was talking.
Oh, he's going to love this. Oh,
yeah,
he's going to be like, ooh, they're talking about me.
Like, I wanted to rewrite this band bio or this band promo.
With the AI.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't like that.
All right, explain that situation for our viewers who aren't the 5 people in the band that will know what the heck we're talking about.
Well, so obviously when you have a website or you're trying to sell or promote a band, it's like you got to say, oh, we're this party band who plays this type of music, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But like with the Taylor band, it's like, oh, we're doing like tribute. We're kind of doing a tribute, but we're also just covering our songs because I'm not doing like the whole blonde wig and all that. But I wanted it to be really authentic. And even if it's not perfectly written, I mean, but that's just me. Like, I respond better to things that just, feel real. Mm-hmm. There's so much AI and there's so much stuff that's like so overproduced. And then you see a lot of stuff that's maybe more minimal that like gets all this attention or maybe is just a better way to promote things because everyone has these applications or ways to like do things that are super complex and like look really cool, but then almost are like too crowded. Mm-hmm. I'm losing what I want to say. Sorry. Okay. So him wanting to revamp the bio, it's like, I get it. You want to make the website look really good. You want it to look professional and you want that bio to really sell it.
Yes.
But the minute you bring AI into it, it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like that's just, it's not like real anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously people have lots of feelings about AI and like, it's amazing what AI can do, but that is just so far from like how I ever saw starting this project. So yeah, working with someone who is so different, like with the wedding band and like the duo gigs, I just kind of let him. I'm like, I'm just showing up and I'm singing and like that's great.
There's not that emotional investment. There's not that 4 component.
No, and I still like love it. It's just like but with the Taylor thing, like we're both kind of heading this project.
Yeah,
but oh wow, do we see this differently?
Yes.
Sometimes.
Okay, so anyway. Just to kind of round out, on the website, I have, this is you. This is your quote. What I love about Taylor Swift is she sings about the most vulnerable aspects of heartbreak and isn't afraid to be fully herself. I'm blown away by her repertoire and never-ending creativity.
I put repertoire in there. I really I went for the big word.
Yeah.
Come on. I was trying to really come off like
okay.
I know my
All
stuff.
Right.
But.
So that kind of speaks to your interest. And then, so this AI thing, he wants to rewrite more things than that later on down the list, and you're like a hard stance. I don't want AI. It's not authentic, that kind of thing. And that, I take that situation. I tally that in my 1 column.
Oh,
because
okay.
I think that shows where there's a kind of like this is a value, and I think there's several times where. I'm leading value first. Like I'm not leading people pleasing first. I'm not leading everybody get along first. I'm leading this is a value and it's important to me. And I'm willing to withstand a little conflict and disagreement because this thing is antithetical to my values. And so what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's fair. It's not like I look at one and say, oh, I'm nothing like that. It's like, I'm not, I like to think I'm self-aware. So there's definitely certain, but I think about what Taylor represents. And if we're doing any sort of tribute, it just feels like we're not paying tribute to this real, authentic person who's vulnerable and all of these things. Mm-hmm. Like, and while I see what you're saying, like, oh gosh. If I say, who are you without your values? Maybe that's a really one thing to say, but like everyone has values, no matter what type you are, I would say. And like, I would hope, maybe like 9s would have a harder time like drawing a line, but like, I think everyone should be drawing a line where it's like, hey, this doesn't feel right.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, everyone has values.
I'm also not as good. If I'm trying to think of when we had that conversation. Oh, I guess that was during the day. I was like, I'm going to make an excuse because it was late at night. But that was a different fight. Okay.
Anyway, I do think one of the kind of the defining features of 2 versus 1 is speaking, everyone has values, yes. But 2's values tend to lean more personal to the point of like 1's values.
But I'm personally thinking about Taylor.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So
a little 2 in there, just sprinkled.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, again, there's an interesting dichotomy of one being next to two on the Enneagram. So they do rub off, and they have this, there's this tension. You have a gut type and you have a heart type. And I know that tension well, but from a different angle. I know the head and the heart, tension between 5 and 4. But broadly, I think that twos can elevate the personal values too far. Like what I value is us getting along. I value our connection, and I value being appreciated, being loved. And that's where, on the downside, out of more abstract kind of moral philosophical values,
I think I'm better because I want to do things for people.
Yes,
and
but
that's why my values are right.
Yes, but also you can get into, well, my values just become whatever the other person's values are because I want to be in a relationship with them. I want to be loved by them. I want to appreciate them. So if that other person has bad values and you just value being loved, appreciated, or connected to them, then it's like all of a sudden you have their bad values now too. So that's where
if I was a pure 2, you're saying that's what would happen.
So that's where one brings in, like, wait, there are values or principles that are higher than just our connection or my need for appreciation. Like there are these kind of more universal truths and values that I'm willing to stand for, even if it makes some relationship aspects a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's just food for thought. Anyway, I think there's one more interesting thing to come out of the Taylor thing that I want to discuss. And that's in our old band, Up All Night, you were the last member. You were the last member to come into it. So although we all had an input in the band, I think that a lot of ways in which the band was kind of run and all that was already established.
Yeah.
And like you were kind of a singer. In this Taylor group, you and the other person we've talked about, Mike, were kind of the founders, the idea generators. So you're in kind of a different situation, more as kind of like a band founder, band leader, decider of band culture. Mm-hmm. So what kind of things, decisions what kind of band culture are you trying to create, or et cetera?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking about like the first few rehearsals. It's like I want to know what song everyone connects to. I want everyone to care and love what like they're playing, and I want everyone to make sure that like they're not being stomped over by someone else who has a louder voice, which sometimes is me. Like I do think that like I can be good in a leadership role. Like I'm a different leader than Alan, but like I think also being a therapist or like doing a lot of group therapy, it's just like, let me make sure I'm hearing from every single person around me. And like democracy, like how do we all, like what's the majority? I don't want it to be like, hey, this is what we're doing. And I mean, that's an argument like me and Grassman have a lot, because it's just like, he wants to get things done, and like he does. Like he's so great in all of those ways of booking and getting things going. But I mean, and I realize that it's just like, when you have a lot of people putting in their thoughts and ideas about it can be more complicated to figure out like, okay, what do we do? So I can see both sides. So I'm not saying I'm right, he's wrong, or vice versa. But I want everyone to feel like they're invested, and I want everyone to feel like, oh my gosh, like I love this song, or I connect to this lyric, because for me, like it just reads really well. Like when people are just so involved in what they're playing or do, like you could just, I mean, but maybe that's just me, like just the feeler, the ENFJ, right? Like of, oh my gosh, like you love what you're playing, or this song means something to you, like, and that's what I want. So it's just like, if there was someone in the band that was just like, I have Taylor Swift, I'll do this for the money. It's like, even though, yes, we realize it would be successful because people like her, it's like, but that's not really what I'm looking for. Yeah. To answer the question, I forgot what the question was.
What kind of band culture are you trying to create?
Band culture, collaborative.
Yeah, but a thing where people find their own reason for being in it and feel that that's valued. And
well, yeah, I mean, and especially because now I'm finally, well, not finally, but like I'm really starting to learn what like music burnout is. And like, I guess I would be also say I'm like the youngest of music world and also the youngest. Anyway, but like now having maybe agreed to a lot of gigs, I'm like, oh my God, now I'm tired.
Yeah. You've been busy in some side projects and stuff.
Yeah, but now if the Taylor thing, like obviously we have to keep it going in some sense. Like I want it to be, oh my gosh, like I'm excited to play this show. It is different. Obviously, I'm sure playing original music too is like incredible and cool in its own way. But yeah, I want it to feel fresh and exciting when we do it and not like oh God, here's another one. So and then we have 2 in June, and I'm like, that's just not necessarily what I wanted.
Back to
they're
back?
in different, yeah, but they're not like in the same area. But it's still like, I don't want anyone, feeling burnout.
Fair enough.
Proactive.
All right. Well, speaking of that, I think whatever your Enneagram, I think we have a telling band email that you sent out that I want to share.
Oh, man.
I think it speaks to something.
You really printed stuff out.
I do my homework sometime, but now I realize this makes people probably feel like they're always being watched and observed.
Aren't we always? I don't even care. I mean, not that I don't care, but I'm also just like,
Fair enough. We'll play a fun game with like the 5 people who. I've been getting some more viewers. I appreciate people taking the time to watch. So we'll play a fun game. We're gonna play Guess That Type with. You sent out this. What's your support style email, right?
Oh yes, I did.
Yeah, I think this is like very interesting how everyone responded to that, because I think it's also very reflective of certain people's patterns or styles, and they speak to me in a specific way. I think I will. I will not try to converse too much about the people, because obviously I haven't asked everybody, if they want this shared. So we'll say it unanimously as like person 1, etc. and move on.
It was Annie. I'm just kidding.
But we know who you are because you were the first one to start it, and that's kind of the point I want to wrap up with the Taylor. We've kind of talked about what she represents to you as a figure, and then what being in this band kind of represents to you and whatnot. So we'll just wrap up with this. Anyway, hi everyone. Hi. Sorry, I messed up already. Why don't you read it?
Oh, it's like you
read the first one. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, smiley face. I want everyone to feel supported in the band, and I think being proactive is important. I would like to know what helps people feel supported, especially in music, business, etc. I know we are strapped on time at rehearsals, so maybe email is the best way to start this conversation. For myself, compliment me constantly. I'm just kidding. For myself, I feel most supported when people are direct and transparent while also being empathic with delivery. Bonus when people are attentive to detail and can point out, hey, this particular part was great, or this is good, but could be better if you do this to be like less sharp or whatever. I felt very grateful, supported when it came to help with planning the promo video. Grassman has taken on a lot of the business parts that I feel lost on, which is huge. So that is my piece of the email.
So again, here we have, I think you could make the case like, there's a concern for, making sure that I'm not just the boss, like taking people for the ride I want to go on.
No power dynamic.
Right. So there is a concern. I want to make people feel supported and happy, which I think nicely shows and straddles that kind of 2-1 area. Right. But we could make arguments either way. But then we get into, what are you looking for?
Wait. What is the one part of this? Of me sending this email?
Well, you could say the formality in it. But see, this is where it gets tricky, because are you a 2? Are you just a 2? Or are you a 1 who values 2 things? That's where I think the fundamental kind of possible confusion can come from. Are you a 1 who highly values 2 things, like connection and people feeling supported and those kind of things. I suppose my argument is that I think you're a 1 with very strong 2 values.
You are the expert. I'm just kidding. Ugh. All right, well.
But, I mean, to make my...
I did take the test.
To be fair, to make my case, I feel most supported when people are direct and transparent while also being empathetic with delivery. When people are attentive to detail and can point out, hey, this sounded great, or hey, this could be better if you could improve upon it, essentially. So in a nutshell, you're asking for constructive feedback or ways to improve.
Yes.
Yes. Which, to your credit, I think that is an awesome thing about you. Since Up All Night, like if there was a award that we could give out for most improved, I saw.
Wow,
yes,
that's a very high compliment.
But it's because of this. It's because of that willingness to take feedback, take direct, and that want to improve. And it's nice that you're saying don't just. This made me think about how there's like a continuum of people who can take criticism and people who really don't want to take criticism.
Well, I could credit a lot of that to like 12-step program and like being familiar in that, and just like really having to like accept.
Oh, okay,
flaws.
All right, sure.
So I will say, but I mean, I also think that it's just like, dang, I want to be better, and like you can't be better unless you're. So yeah, now I'm like, oh, when did I like really be willing to? Anyway.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So in general, that's where I would say a lot of the heart types are kind of like, because there's that direct. There's a shame and there's a wanting to be loved, accepted. Hard types can actually be, I think, very resistant, even if like there's just criticism. There's praise or there's like, I don't know that there's always constructive. It's harder to get that constructive criticism because it takes that more detachment of either a gut type or a head type, I think, to be like, so this was going to be like my joke, like, and I would say like kind of sometimes 2s or maybe 3s, maybe 4s, depending, but they could be on the instinct of like, again, because I'm dealing with wanting to be approved of or loved in some way, it's hard for me to accept any type of feedback without feeling attacked or not valued or that kind of thing. So I'd put them on the end of the spectrum, and I don't know if they'd ask for that kind of be attentive to detail and tell me what's wrong with me, because they're like, I'm afraid others will see what's wrong with me. Let's pretend, So then I have like this one kind of 2 thing of saying like, hey, deliver some feedback, but do it empathetically.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm thinking about like my first jobs. Like I worked for my dad, and I love my dad. I'm very close with my dad, but working with my dad was not fun. And like he was very like, this is wrong. This is wrong. You gave me the wrong tool, and it was like, oh, I thought we were like close. Like I thought I was your daughter.
Well, but see, we've talked about like, I kind of think your dad might be a 5 too. And to finish up my joke,
he's for sure a 5.
To finish up my joke about 2s being on like the even constructive criticism reads as like criticism into the spectrum. Then I'd say on the other end of the spectrum, we have 5s where it's like, you can give me any type of criticism. You don't even have to deliver it empathetically or whatever. Like I'll just detach from it, and I'll try to figure out like what you're trying to tell me. Like you don't even have to go through, like, just tell me I suck. It's fine. Like, like I'll do the realizing what you empathetically meant
Good
for
to know.
you. Yeah. Like, you don't even have to worry about that. Like, so I kind of think 1s are somewhere in between there. I don't know.
Okay, I do have one thing to add. Just because I was thinking about my jobs that I had when I was like in high school, and I worked at a hair salon. And I remember like this person had told me that this woman was trying to find like a receptionist. So like I would shampoo, do the back stuff, inventory, front desk, answer the phone, sweep the hair, all the stuff. And this woman had told me that this woman had gone through like 6 like young, like little high school receptionists in like 2 months because she was so hard to work with. And I was like, okay, I can do it. And I'm going to stay. Like I had to prove that like I could be that person that like would stay. And it was terrible. I remember being in finals at college and not having anxiety about the tests because I had agreed to work over winter break. I had anxiety about going home and like working for this woman.
Oh man, okay.
But anyway, I guess I would love for you to make sense of like, but what would you connect to the type in terms of like, no, I'm going to work for this woman and I'm going to like stay there and show you. Is that a 1? Like, let me prove it to you, like that I can make this work despite her being very difficult. Because in my mind, I was like, well, my dad was pretty difficult. So like, how hard could work at this hair salon be? But it was the hardest, like, honestly, it was probably the hardest job I've ever had.
I think so. I think for good and bad, ones have a sense of like, talking about like things that need to be done in the world, need to be improved. I think ones have this sense of like being willing to do some truly unglamorous things because at some point people just need to step up and be responsible. And,
maybe if you described ones that way when you talked about it with your buddy, I would have been like, yeah. I'm doing some kind of light stories here, but I do have, I think, a really good story that I want to make the case for. Anyway. Are we playing the guessing game that I've derailed?
Yeah. Oh man, podcasts are tough because like, do we go on all the 5 topics that we just potentially explored, or do we try to wrap around back to this guessing game thing?
I like games, and I think that any of your new listeners would just love it.
All right, we're gonna finish up with the game. So we kind of said where there's this care for others, but I do think this desire for considerate feedback speaks to a very like admirable thing about you, which has tangibly shown. To finish up that story, I was going to say I got the opportunity. It's different when you're in a band with someone, because it's like you can kind of hear what the person's doing, but I have to focus on what I'm doing and I'm playing. So you can't always appreciate like someone's improvement or something because you have to focus on your own task. But not long ago, I got to come see a show of yours where I wasn't in the band, so I was just an audience member. So fun. That in particular, I was like, damn, Holly's really. Like she's come along. You could like, for your example of like sharp and flatness, like you were on.
You were really sharp at this song, but
you were great. You were great. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so to go back, you wanted everyone to feel supported, and then you asked, how people can communicate with you to feel that way, and everyone else got to put their piece in.
I was a little nervous when I sent that email. I was like, that was kind of a vulnerable email, but like I felt close enough to you guys to hope like that you would hopefully respond. But I was also like, oh God, what if they're like, oh God, Holly, like I roll, like I'm not responding.
Therapist, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a band, not a therapy office. God.
That's exactly.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, person A, who you can't name, but the first person to respond.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
I'm thankful. Thanks, Holly. I'm thankful that you've all been patient with me as I learn this new instrument. I think better things are to come, equipment, skill, etc. I appreciate help and feedback about sounds and whatnot. I'm not set in my ways because I don't know any better. So I have my guesses about that, but everyone else can give their guesses. I think I really want to give my opinions, but I'll restrain myself. So anyway, okay. Should we go on? Move on, next person?
Yes, but I will just say I talked to this person recently. We were talking about personality types, and according to some online tests, which you can, make your own assumptions about, we're very similar, like on a lot of different, like Clifton strengths, MBTI. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Person B. Good topic and points, Holly and Annie. Damn it. All right. This game. Oh, yep.
Whoops. Okay.
Okay. I appreciate what both of you said. For me, I just invite people to let me know if I'm being too much. I'm just going to cut this. This is boring. No,
Well,
all
you
right.
could just do a little bleep.
Yes. All right. In general, I think I'm a very easygoing guy, but in the context of music or creative things, I can be a lot more intense. Also, the producer role, where I get to arrange and play or determine all of the instrumentation, is very different from the band role. I think that the insights from producing can be beneficial for the band, but I'm often concerned about overstepping. I'd like to worry about that less, to be excited and share my ideas as they naturally come, and then in turn just invite others to not be shy, give feedback, or let me know if I'm being overwhelming or whatnot. That was a wordy mess. Okay.
It wasn't a mess. I keep going. People are playing the game. They're at home.
All right. So that's another type, a little different from the other types we've seen. Here's the next type, whose name I will do my best not to say.
Bleep.
I like this idea and appreciate everyone immensely. I feel like we have something special that everyone has ability to add to it. I can be honest that I know my style of running a business is unorthodox. However, I feel it is successful. It is tough for me to break away from my methods and philosophies unless it is met with concise and specific examples or criticisms. I'm also a huge risk taker and thrive under stress and pressure, but I know that this isn't how others like to feel. I'm generally willing to take things on my shoulders myself so as not to burden others with my expectations, but I also feel that I need space to operate with support and understanding that things will happen and be successful. I don't respond well to negativity or vague criticisms. I feel every single person in this band can achieve our individual goals and lean on each other to strengthen our weaknesses and learn from each other. You started quite a conversation here, Holly, and you're getting some thoughtful...
I should reread this email because I was like, how do you want to be supported by? Yeah, okay.
You're getting some thoughtful responses.
Well, I love learning about people. It's interesting.
Yeah. Next person. I'm a true believer in magic. All right, so we had A, B, that was C. This person is person D. Funny how this is working out. Anyway... I'm a true believer that magic happens naturally under the right circumstances. This group creates an environment where this philosophy works. I'm extremely patient, yet passionate when making music. I get excited about silly things. I have tons of ideas, but usually only a select few break down the barriers, and I'm okay with that. Let's effing go. All right. Yes, I wish I could play this game and I didn't know the answers, but anyway, I hope everyone else plays. Person E. I am more used to a sports environment rather than a music one, so for me, I view the band as a team. Try to find ways to accentuate our strengths and cover our weaknesses. The important thing is team success, not individual accolades. If something is good, say good job. If something needs to be worked on, or if we need to pivot because it's not coming together, then say it. It's all about team success and using everyone's strengths for that goal. And like in a sports environment, I more often than not am thinking about the team's success more than individuals' feelings. But I will give and like praise when it's deserved, so that's how I operate, but also realize some people are different than I am. All right. So
lots of humble answers.
Nice. That's why I like being in a band. You really get some it's very, you get a lot of people from different backgrounds, and if you have generally good people, obviously you still have some disagreements to work out, but it's also kind of a joy to see these different value structures, and
comment your answers below.
Yes, of course. All right. All right. So that's kind of our music discussion for the time being. I want to go back in history a bit. Go back to the
outfit.
The outfit
with Ale.
No.
That's all I was thinking about. I was like, oh God, are they going to talk about that story?
We've exhausted that story. We do not need to go back there.
He apologized to me like years later, gave me a real apology.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, someone who really gets over things, clearly. Okay, me.
Do you want to?
No. Waste of time. Okay.
All right. So...
Okay, if you're curious, it was an interesting outfit that I chose to wear, and the drummer didn't like it and was vocal about it, and I got really pissed. Anyway.
Why did you get pissed?
Because it was rude. It was like, how dare you? He's like, oh, I could drive you home and you could change. Let me just tell you, that's how he started the conversation. He's like, hey, Holly, come here. Do you want me to drive you home so you can change?
A lot of assumptions being made in that offer, right?
I said F you to him and to Chris, because I was like, oh, Chris got him worked up. And Chris is like, I don't like your outfit, but I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Which sounds about right. And I was like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Like, there was no tact. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could not believe it. Just felt so disrespectful. But we are buddies, and I love him. And anyway.
Well, you have to. You're
and he
also
did give
in
me
a
a
band
real
still with
apology.
him, so
3 years later, yeah, we still play together. So
yeah.
All is forgiven, I guess.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, just a theme here. You know, we've been talking about Talia 1 or 2, and I've been preparing for this podcast for like, 5 years, collecting my examples. And I have this story that I want to revisit. It was at the Pillars gig. Do you remember that one?
Oh, the cupcake?
Yes. All right. Yes. You know. All right. So,
oh my God.
So this was very not long after I first introduced the Enneagram to the band. I know. So anyway, we're visiting this band story, which you remember, the Pillars gig.
I didn't remember telling you about it.
Wait,
I'm not surprised.
You
but
remember
anyway.
telling me. Oh yeah. No. Okay. So this was very young Elliot. I had the audacity to tell everyone in the band, I'm pretty sure this is your Enneagram type. And again, other, people had different responses, but you were not necessarily buying it. And you're like, I don't think I'm a 1. You
had the audacity.
I had the audacity to type people, and you were not buying it. And there were several things. So that was the general premise, but there were like 3 things within. This is how I remember the conversation. Within a 1-minute time period of you telling me, no, I'm not a 1, there were like 3 things that I'm like, yeah, I think you're 1. So first and foremost, I think the whole premise of the conversation, because there's this, you can read about like how different types like relate to each other and kind of react and respond to each other, etc. So first and foremost for me, it was like even the fact that you're willing to be argumentative and challenging with me about this. Like
That's
I'm like
very 2-like. Okay.
Yeah, right. No, but seriously, like 2s would be like, oh, tell me more about this interesting
That's true.
thing that
Okay.
you're into, because I want to get to know you and I want to connect.
I wish I was that way.
Whereas your response was like, I know about personality tests and I know how like, confirmation biases.
I also
and,
had the audacity. Okay.
Yes, right. So immediately, just the fact that like we were willing to go into this. And that's what they say. You can read, the Enneagram Institute has some very interesting things you can look up about how each type relates to each other. And on some level, they word these things from like purely like a romantic relationship, but it does transfer to all types of relationships, general things. And one of the general themes of like 1s and 5s is there's both have a relationship with truth and certitude and principles and like these things. So there can be fruitful conversations. There can be, admirable.
How would you rate this one so far?
Fruitful. I would rate it as fruitful.
What kind of fruit?
But both can kind of get away a little bit from taking everything so personal that they enjoy discussing more philosophical type discussions such as personality, whatever. So that was kind of my first thing. Like, well, you're not that you need to be warm. Like, I like a challenge. So it's like, it's like, okay, let's have a little debate here, which is kind of, I guess, the vibe that I'm taking this podcast, to be fair. Like, so thanks for playing game with that.
Okay.
So that was my first thing. But then the second thing, again, this is all like within a span of a minute. Okay, so you're making that case. You're like, I don't know about this anymore. How are you sure? Like, what's true? Like, are you sure there's not confirmation bias or like the P.T. Barnum effect? We're like, anyway, so that was one. Then second, you brought it up, the cupcake thing. What's your recollection of the cupcake thing?
Well, I don't know if we have this. The cupcake thing was more so after the show that I'm thinking of that I don't know if I ever told you about. but
No,
I know
this
I
was
got a
in the
cupcake.
Yes.
Well, I got a cupcake because it was my birthday. It was a birthday show.
Yes.
And I had some eating problems earlier in my 20s, and I was like, oh my God, I can't have all this sugar. Like, I'm trying not to eat sugar, and I was really hyper about it, and I was trying to get rid of it.
Yes.
That's what I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
That's what I'm referring to.
Okay,
I don't know what happened
because there was
after.
a very funny story, but I could hold that for after you talk about your cupcake.
That was my point, where I was saying, you know what? Like, and that's
the eating, the hyper eating.
So you
rules.
receive the gift, you're like, oh, thank you, that's thoughtful, and but then you turn to me, you're like, oh my God, I can't eat this. And that's where I was also saying, like, a 2 would just be like, oh, they would say, oh, thank you, that's so thoughtful, and then whether they wanted to eat it or not, they'd be like, this person thought about me enough to bring me a cupcake. I will eat it for them. But you're like, I can't eat this.
Oh, man. Just wait till you hear
this. So I'm
this.
like, all right, check mark number 2 for my theory.
Just wait for the story. Wow. Okay, well, you're in for a treat.
All right. So, I'm in for a treat.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Pun intended. So after the show, I had actually given the cupcake, I gave it to the sound guy.
Okay.
He was like, oh, yeah, I'll have it. And I'm walking out. I'd packed up all my stuff. I'm walking out, and the kind woman who had given me the cupcake for my birthday must have seen the bag sitting by the sound guy, thinking I left it there. She's like, oh, don't forget your cupcake. And it was like a nice cupcake, right? Like it was one of those ones with filling, like gourmet, like really good. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. So then I walk out to my car. And so like while I had all these eating rules, I would binge sometimes. Like I had, the rules don't work. Rules never really work when it comes to eating. Anyway, I would try so hard to like eat super healthy. But then of course I would crash and burn. And once I crashed and burned, it was like all hell breaks loose with eating.
Yeah.
So it was at like 2 a.m. I was starving after jumping around on stage.
Yeah.
So I bring this cupcake out to my car because it's like I can't give it away now. And I eat the entire thing.
Okay.
Like the minute I get in the car at 2 a.m. Okay, the reason that this is funny, I mean, one, because I'm eating a cupcake with my hand in the car like an animal. And then I'm driving home. And so it's 2 a.m., like late at night, driving through like West Bend or whatever. And I passed so many cops on my way home. And I wasn't drunk, so like it was fine. But I was like, ooh, don't want to get pulled over right now.
Not drinking and driving, eating cupcakes and driving.
Yeah, really. And so I get home, and at that point, my apartment had like a mirror on the door. So like when I walked in, I could like see myself immediately. And I walk in my apartment, and I'm like, what the hell? And I like go up to the mirror. There's white powder all over from that cupcake. And I'm like, oh my God, if I had gotten pulled over, and I'm like,
nice.
So that's what I thought you were referring to. But yeah, I remember.
No, I'm glad this came. I only knew the beginning of the story.
But I do remember the horror of being given this cupcake. Like, oh my God, that is so sweet. But like, holy shit, like I can't eat this. Like there's so much sugar. Like, and I had it in my mind. It's like, once I eat sugar, I'm just going to eat all the sugar.
Yeah.
It was also around Christmas, and I knew that I was going to probably eat a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. But what you said there about like the restriction, that to me really spoke to the connection of 1 and 7, because, and that's where I think there's also a challenge both for 1s and 7s of finding a balance point, because 1 to me represents over restraint and over restriction. And then one way that 1 goes to 7 is like, all right, I can't maintain this restriction forever.
School of Rock principle,
dancing on the table, so you go from like restriction to indulgence, like, just totally go to the opposite end of the spectrum. So I think one of the life challenges from different directions for both 1 and 7 is finding that area where you can have like healthy, pleasurable experiences and not deprive and not overdo it, and just figure out how to fit pleasure or fun or enjoyment or any of those kind of things into life without having this consuming relationship of I can't do that, or I only want to do that and avoid the responsibility aspect or whatever.
Yeah.
So that, on a deep level, I think that's reflected in these kind of little silly silly stories or examples.
Yeah.
But I think that really speaks to some of the archetypal center stones of those points and how these lines on the Enneagram are connected and related.
But I think it is hard to think about that because I can understand that being so one-like, and the 7, but that was such a not good time in my life. The way that I would restrict or be inflexible or have these rules, I was so unhappy, especially with eating. That's a whole other, I won't go down that tangent, but it was so unhappy. And now I've lots of support groups, therapy and all that. Now it's like I have a regular relationship with food. So,
well, I think that's one of the things. I'll go on a little Enneagram soapbox here. I can't act. Yeah, they'll actually say I don't like the integration disintegration, like one type is good, one type is bad, kind of theory. Because from the perspective of 1, they'll say that 7 is the healthy integration point and 4 is the unhealthy, disintegration point.
Oh,
and my argument has always been that you can go to either point in healthy or unhealthy ways. And where was I going with this? Well, you just spoke to it. Unhealthy relationship with food. Is it and what you just spoke to. Now you have friends, you have support. Like you have, to me, the answer is not just 1, I'm being too restrictive. The answer to some of these restrictive things is not just, oh, go have more fun, party, just blow it off.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like that 7 vibe. The answer is really going to 4, going to the heart space,
learning more about yourself.
Right. A connection, meaningful, something getting in a better emotional space. So I think the example we're actually speaking to speaks how the solution to, in this case, one of the kind of one difficulties, 7 shows the unhealthy aspect of it, just going from too much restraint to too much not restraint.
I have to be careful
Whereas
with that 7.
4 actually balances things and says, well, let's get into a totally different heart space and let's find some value or purpose or meaning there. And then that can put this 1-7 tension in a different context where it's not the only thing talking.
Yeah, 7, if I think about the times of my life that would probably be described as 7-ish, are probably some of the best times that are memories I'll never forget, but also risky or impulsive and just sometimes too much.
Yeah. Well, you also had recently you had an interesting observation. You came back from vacation. Was it in Cancun or something?
Yes.
Yes, recently. And you're like, oh God, what is this gonna?
Oh God. Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna give too many. I don't know. Anyway, you asked you said this. It's kind of interesting. I'm bringing this up because of the 1-7 thing.
I said that. Yeah.
You said what's your thoughts on hedonism?
Well, yeah, because it's isn't that what everyone's kind of striving for, or looking for when they go on some wild? Okay, you can keep going.
Well, is that what everyone's looking for when they? And it was interesting. I think it's interesting in this context. Whether you want to say it's 2 or 1, we your job. What's your job again? Let's remind people.
I'm a therapist.
A therapist, specifically working with.
Oh, I work a lot with addiction, but I do a lot of general mental health.
Yeah.
In my outpatient.
So, but there's a seriousness and a heaviness to your job.
Oh, sure.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So your response was I went on vacation. I don't want to ever leave. Let's keep this party going. Can't we all do that? Isn't that what we all want?
Oh man, I still have my license until this podcast. Just kidding.
No. But I thought it was interesting that
it wasn't that wild. I just realized, having drinks and laying by the pool and having to do nothing. It's wow.
Yeah.
This is great. But should we really know what that feels like? And maybe that's also because that's kind of what I think about with some of my patients. I've experimented a little bit, but I haven't used, hard drugs. And it's when I think about people using opiates or heroin, it's I don't think that people were supposed to know what that felt like.
Yeah, that's it. Once you know how, because then you have to,
Nothing's ever going to be
seemingly,
that.
then you didn't have to have restraint before you knew what it was like. But now that you know what it's like, it's like, I have to have restraint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like with my vacation. It's like, is this really good for me to like have this kind of fun party giggling with my friends,
Yes.
like getting served hand and foot? It's like, this is too good. Like, this is not real life. And like, how the hell do I just back?
Well, I think that is where the spiritual life or the spiritual look on life comes in, because if you're just searching for pleasure in external circumstances, then it is this whole cycle of nothing's ever enough and everything's dissatisfactory and this.
Yeah.
So that where there is, and this is where the Enneagram comes in, that desire to kind of know oneself and find an inexhaustible like source of peace or love and joy that on some level I think is the only ultimate solution to the pleasure, pain, attachment, aversion, seeking, resisting aspect of kind of just purely human biological life.
Yeah. And that's why it's like treatment and everything is so hard, because it's like you can't manufacture spirituality.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say. You were talking about spirituality and like the answer. Okay, I forgot. If it comes back, it comes back.
Fair
Acceptance.
enough.
Oh wait, I remember. Okay, I will just never forget. One time I was sitting with my therapist. This was years ago. I was like, how do I stay in self-actualization? Like, how do I stay in this like tip of the pyramid? And it's like, it's not self-actualization if you're there all the time. Vacation isn't vacation if you're in vacation all the time. Life is always a flow. Right?
I like it.
You know, because sometimes music feels like that self-actualization. Have you seen Soul?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, that would be a really good movie to, well, I don't know how I would connect necessarily to Enneagram, but
I find a way for anything to connect to the
okay,
Enneagram.
but you know, I don't want to say should, but like, I think that you would really love it. It made me emote. I like cried like 4 times in that movie. It just felt so, and it's music related. So anyway.
All right. Good deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, to wrap up this kind of one conversation, you have this very serious job, and then you went on, vacation. It's like, how do I thought it was very telling that there's another band member that I may have some disagreements with about their type as well. But he as well, you're in the 1-2 plane. He's in the 7-8 realm. And
well, more 7 or more 8?
Well, I have my opinions on that.
I want to know so bad.
I know, but do I share them before I get them on the
now we got to
podcast?
wait for the next episode.
But anyway, for this conversation, he leans 7. He's the band leader, and he's a musician for a living. So his job, is kind of more fun, and it's not as heavy.
As a friend, he's a 7 for sure. Yeah. But as a business,
but his job, either way, his job has more fun built into it. His job has more party.
Oh, yeah. So, he doesn't care so much about vacation. He's like,
his remark to you saying like, oh, I went on vacation, I never come back. He's like, I go on vacation for a couple days. I'm like, I'm ready to come home. Like, when do I come?
Oh, you did hear him say, okay. Yeah.
So I thought it was really telling, you have this kind of serious job, and then you're like, how do I ever want to come home from vacation? And he has a more fun he has more 7 built into his job. So he's like, a couple days vacation, I'm good to get back to the grind, but it's not the same type of grind.
And while my job, it is really serious. Like I love learning about people, and sometimes like the laughter, oh my gosh, like it's just the best part. So I mean, but no, it's not this vacation. It's not fun. I'm not socializing with people out but it's very gratifying in other ways.
Yeah.
So
let's go into that. I still have in my back pocket that story that I think is very flattering about ones that I want to revisit.
No more cupcakes. Okay.
No more. Oh no. Okay. So there's one thing. So we hit on the fact that we're like having this kind of friendly sparring disagreement about truth, and then we have the cupcake thing. Like, oh my God, thank you. Oh my God, I can't eat this.
Is that going to be the title of this or something?
What?
How do you feel about like you got all these funky titles like? How would you react if you were given a cupcake? Some like weird title?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I usually need to reflect on this to think about. I don't know what the title is.
All right.
Yet. The third thing, I can't remember the wording of this. I hope you can help me out here because you remember this too. But so this cupcake thing happened, and then like you turned to me and you said something like, oh my God, like something happened at work today where like someone told me that I was enough, and like I just started bawling.
Oh, no.
But I specifically want to get the wording of what the person said there.
I think it was I had a meeting with my supervisor, and
Yeah.
I think he told me he was proud of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I mean, I just like, those are just not words that I was used to hearing. And I was like, and my parents are wonderful people. They've always showed up for me. They've done everything for me. They're not like super warm, fuzzy, like,
Yeah.
oh, Holly, you cutie, you know?
Yeah,
like,
which if we go on the thing of, you know, maybe mom being 1, his dad being 5, those are more emotionally reserved types,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
But yes, I do remember my supervisor, and I was just like it hit me. I mean, I just was not expecting that, and it was just like, have I really ever heard that like phrase so just like plainly?
Yeah.
And especially about your job. It's like, you know, you go to school and you do that, and it's like you don't always hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about that?
So it's I'm proud of you.
Oh, being accepted, like being enough. I mean,
yeah, you know, and you know, maybe, you know, to go back, why did I do these hair? You know, I was wanting someone to be proud. You know, why did I? You know,
I wanted to prove how like I could be.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Which, again, it gets a little murky purely whether that's a one thing or a two thing. But again, to the themes of this podcast, I think it, like, why would that, you know, be such a like meaningful thing? You know, I think it.
Well, you got a lot locked up here. Sobriety's good for you. All right.
All right. I want to know. Yeah. So we kind of. How did you? At what point did you decide? I want to go into the career thing a little more to kind of parse that out a bit. Like, at what point did you just decide that that was something you wanted to do, and what kind of life experience or values led you in that therapy direction?
In high school, I'm pretty sure like psychology was the only class that I thought was even remotely interesting. So I was like, okay, let's major in psych. But I was good at math. So, and I always say this is like, I got a minor in math and I got a major in psychology and it was funny because psychology is so gray, but like with math, I still like had this piece of my life that gave me an answer.
Yeah.
The oneness. Anyway, but yeah, I remember in college binge watching Intervention because it was on Netflix at the time, and I was just like, whoa, like with drugs and addiction, and I was so fascinated. Like, how could this one thing just tear apart the rest of your life? And I think I related to that, like, because I can be like really compulsive. Like, I used to pick at my skin a lot, and it just felt like this crazy compulsive thing. And therapy helped me out of it. Like, went to therapy in high school, like, because I was struggling. I was put on medication really early, and like, I also wonder how being on a stimulant affected like the skin picking, because I feel like.
Sure.
Yeah, it was incessant, and it was like, yeah, it was so addictive. So anyway, when I was watching Intervention, I mean, I learned so much about myself in grad school, and then like doing my internship and like working as a therapist. It's like, yeah, of course you uncover a lot of parts of yourself when you're talking to different people, even though it needs to be about people. You know, there's certain things that you're like, oh, you know, I got to reflect about that. Like,
yeah, that's
later.
kind of the joke about like psychologists, right?
I know, but that's so bad. It's like, oh, they come because they need to figure themselves out. And it's whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, but don't we all? It's just that some people are maybe more like intuitive or like
and also
curious.
Our work, you know, is also, and our life, you know, something we put a lot of time and energy to is also whether it's a therapist or not. Like, it's a great place to learn something about yourself.
Yeah. So I think having decent experience with like a therapist in high school who like really helped me work through just struggling with expectations. Like, I was always so like hung up. I'll never forget this. I can't believe I'm telling this story. But the first time my therapist, right before I left for college, he's just like, do you remember the first time that you came in? And I was like, no. And he's just like, you came in because you had come home and my mom had started putting up the Christmas decorations outside, but she didn't wait for me. Okay. And I like had a meltdown and I got really upset. And I realized even now it's like I can get like really excited or have this idea of something, and like I'm much better at managing it now, but like, yeah, whether it's like birthdays or like certain things where you're like, oh my God, like this is gonna be so great. And when it's not, you know, just that fallout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe there's oneness in that of like, this is how it should be. And then when it's not, I just crumbled.
Yeah, the expectations of 7 and then the disappointment. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I had a good therapist in high school, watched a lot of it. I was interested in psychology, like behavior. It's like, make this make sense. And then binge watching Intervention and being like, holy crap, like drugs are crazy. And I also, didn't realize how much it connected, whether it was like rules and issues around food and like, my own picking and like just feeling compulsive. So yeah, I guess.
Okay, so I think that answers it, because I think a follow-up question, but I think you answered it. I'll say it anyway if you have anything to expand on. But there's several types of psychologists or therapists you can be. And another interesting point I would make is it's interesting. I think a lot of things map nicely onto the Enneagram, and this kind of drug and substance kind of thing seems like something that would be more of a one thing, where if I think of like a more Carl Jung type of therapist.
Oh, sure.
Like a let's go into the deep. I mean, it's the shit I talk about. Like, let's go into the deep archetypal narrative. Like, I think one's like a little more practical, like down, like
it's like there is a topic. There are like a lot of it. It's a cleaner. Yeah, it's a less gray therapy. Not to say that it's not so gray.
Yeah.
But there are very like concrete things that like need to be laid out. There's some organization to the therapy.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Anything you think more to answer on the work front, or does that kind of?
No, but as things go on, it's like I realize there's a lot of therapists that don't want to work with substance use, and I can understand that in an outpatient perspective, because if people are having a hard time, they're not necessarily coming to their monthly appointment, rather than like a treatment center where it's like people are maybe coming right out of detox. But yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of people don't like do that. Kind of goes back to my point, like where there's that one element of like a lot of people don't like it. It's not fun. It's not glamorous.
Well, they also have not glamorous, but also like there's also people that have personal connection. Like I don't know that I would have the same energy for it if I had like this deeply close relationship where someone was died from an overdose or something, like, or it hurt me, or there was abuse or something that was like so closely related to addiction. Like I know addiction from like a secondhand, like maybe a slightly distant relationship. You know what I mean? Like not this like firsthand addiction stomped on me,
Gotcha. Okay. Because then that would always be reminding you of that.
I think it'd be hard. Yeah. I mean, I think about like when people bring up eating stuff, or what I will say though, when I've had a few people that have come in and like talked about skin picking, it's like it does make me emotional, which isn't necessarily me being a great therapist, but I'm just like, I'm so happy to be able to like understand in some way. And like then you think about where people talk about substance use therapists, like, oh, are you in recovery? And it's like, well, no, I've certainly cut back on drinking at different points because I realized that I got carried away, but it doesn't call to me the same way that drugs and alcohol call to some people.
All right. I think it's time for me to share my nice one story to wrap things up.
I really don't know what you're gonna say.
Okay. I'm going to say so this was a gig we were playing like in the Kenosha area or something like that. And there was some time, the band was like staying at a hotel, like we'd done some radio thing in the...
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had time to kill, right? So everyone went out to lunch. And there was this restaurant where they had, the menus were like literally posters. Do you remember now?
Yeah, I mean, I remember there was like there was a mermaid without a top on the wall. I
don't remember that. But anyway, the gist of this story...
I remember the tits. I'm just kidding.
The gist of this story is that we go to this... and nowadays, like, I think the restaurant was just trying to be unique or like have something new. And, nowadays every restaurant...
Oh, it was like a newspaper.
Scan your phone, to get the menu. But we went to this restaurant where instead of like having, the permanent... what's the word? Menus... on laminate or whatever, they had probably the size of this.
Yes. Okay. Yeah,
probably the size of this. This was like the menu. Just a huge, like, I don't know, what is this? 24 by 30 piece of paper. And it's like, even if you only want a Coke and a Caesar salad, you have to
That sounds pretty good right now, actually.
you have to write your order on this like huge piece of poster.
A little side of fries. I'm hungry.
And
okay.
and again, this I think kind of tipped your value scale a little bit, where I think fair to say like some sense of environmental responsibility, or being a steward is a value of yours to some degree.
Okay.
So you were having some conflict about like, this is so wasteful. Like
Okay.
all 8 of us here.
I'm so glad you remember that. I don't remember this.
Oh, damn. All right. No, I remember this very vividly.
Great.
So all like 8, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to write on this. Like all 8 of us are gonna. You can't just take can I just tell? Like this was your thing. Like, can I just tell you what I want? Like, I just want a salad. Like, do I really need to? Each person is supposed to write like their order on this huge piece of like paper cardboard. And you were kind of thinking like, this is really wasteful.
I really needed to prove myself, I guess. Wow.
Well, this is where I'm going with it though. And I think that everyone else, I observed it. First of all, if I'll be honest, my first reaction was kind of similar, because I have similar, vibes, or not to some degrees. I'd say 5 comes first for me, but relatively high up the pecking order of Enneagram, kind of places that I go. I'd say 1's high up there. It's not number 1, but it's not number 1, but it's high up there. So I had similar thought, where it's like, really? Like this is pretty wasteful at the end of the day. But unlike you, I didn't voice it, I just kind of heard you.
I need everyone to agree with me.
But no, actually, to my point, you voiced, I think this is, I'm going to speak what I think some of the best oneness that I see in you is this responsibility, this, this willing to, and I think people started teasing you a little bit about this, as I recall, like, oh, Holly, just loosen up, light up, like it doesn't matter.
I know, but it feels so like attention seeking. Like I can look at like some behavior and it's like, oh, I had to say something. I had to be annoying about it. Like, and it's like, why would
No,
I?
see, but
okay, but it didn't come off that way.
No,
which I guess
it
is
didn't
good.
to me, because what I think you've always done a good job at is having your values, but not proselytizing them to other people, and not like saying, you all need to do this. I'm eating vegan and you all need to eat vegan too. And if you don't, you're despicable. It was very much like, I don't really feel comfortable like this. And like, I understand that people have different things, and I'm going to try to live my values as much as I can, but I'm not going to go at you, So I thought it was that kind of scenario where you were like, I'm not really sure about this. And then other people kind of, maybe teasing you like, oh, Holly, like, it doesn't matter. And, I've just been observing this whole thing the whole time, right? And I felt similar to you. And that's where,
you could have joined right in.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh.
Because I made
I don't
it.
remember that.
What I kind of, how I saw it, it's like, that's what I said. I think sometimes 1s can feel like it's 1s against like the rest of the Enneagram, because I think of the bystander effect a bit, where everyone's like, oh, that's someone else's problem.
Yes.
Or or again, like say the environment, it's like, yeah, well, everyone agrees like it's a little wasteful, but it's like, oh, I'm only one person and it's only one time I'm eating at this restaurant. Yeah. And you can make that argument, but you can make the argument that so many of the problems that people have, or the world has, is because everyone says, well, I'm just one person.
Yeah.
I'm not significant, which is kind of true. But of course, if everyone takes that, view. So that's where I think the beauty of 1s is to like not intellectualize away responsibility, but say, it's got to start somewhat. It's got to start with some people really actually making the effort to live their values, whether they get criticized for it, whether they get made fun of it for it, whether people agree with them, all that stuff. Like, I'm not going to intellectualize this way again, and you can all think that I'm being too serious. and to your credit, you're not even going to like go fight back at them and say, but maybe you're all too lazy and you got, so you just got, I thought you just got, and that's how I saw this situation playing out. So that's where everyone kind of, is like, oh, Holly, just take it easy. Like, it's not a big deal. And that's where I basically, as I recall, went on this kind of tangent too. Like, wait a second. If we all agree this is a little, why is she the only one? Like, so as I recall, the evening or one of the ending points was like we ordered on this. I put your salad on my menu so we wouldn't have to tick off all these boxes. But the other thing was like everyone else kind of agreed, like, yeah, this is a little. Maybe this isn't like the smartest thing for a restaurant to do. It's a little much. So,
Yeah, it's probably expensive too. I mean, just to be printing that much all the time. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I wish you were more excited about this story. No, but
sorry. Yeah, I'm not that excited. But I'm glad. But it's nice to know how I come out because, yeah, I guess maybe there's that critic in me of like sometimes, I'm attention seeking or I'm kind of like being boisterous or did I really need to say that? Like, did I really need to interrupt this? But yeah, you're right. But I think it's interesting. All of this of what you're bringing up, like, is almost why I'm leaving my job currently. I'm moving to I'm still going to be a therapist, but like I've been burning out and it's like, I haven't been recycling as well. Like I haven't been doing, and it's just like, ooh, like I'm losing these things that like I was really thoughtful of like, hey, these things still count. And I'm just like, I don't even have the energy.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get that.
Because see, again, there's that beautiful aspect of one, like someone has to do it. Like not everyone can just pretend that it's not there or it doesn't exist. And not everyone can just say, oh, well, someone else will handle it. Like, there's that beautiful aspect of one that I think is willing to be that first person to see where things could be improved and take on that responsibility. But then, of course, you can't be the savior and you can't fix everything. And then when you start to notice that you're putting so much into this one aspect of life that other aspects are suffering so I think what I share, speaks to, that awesome aspect of one. And then what you just shared kind of speaks to, I think that's a great theme of the Enneagram. Like so many of these qualities are great and noble, but everything, whether you want to say exists in moderation or, you can take any great value and take it too far where it becomes unproductive.
Yeah.
But even something as simple as the little restaurant menu story to me kind of really spoke to. And again, when I said that one aspect where it's like, I'm willing to put aside approval. I'm willing to put aside the group's opinions of me. And if I'm the only one who's like doing this value here, like that's fine because it matters to me.
Well, yeah, and I do take pride in that. I do. Yeah. Because, I can think at different times, whether it was like at a work meeting or something, it's just like, yeah, I'm not afraid. And I can take pride in like, I'm not afraid of speaking up on certain things when I really feel like, yeah, this is crazy. It's like, why is this so big?
Yeah.
But you know what? Even though I'm not like that excited by the story, I do remember being at the restaurant. And I like the fact that you're remembering it. It's like, people, it's just incredible what people remember.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, oh, I don't even really remember, having a fit about this or like what Alan remember. I mean, your memory is probably very telling of your type too, of like, this very much stood out to me.
Okay, so maybe it wasn't that significant for you, but maybe it was significant for me because like I said, I have one values, but if I start with 5, I can say that my first gut one instinct was probably yours. Like, this is wasteful. Like, I would rather not order this way. But, that I, is like, oh, I'm getting caught up in whatever people are, I'm observing how other people are responding to this too. But again, I would say that I found your oneness inspiring in this instance, where, it's like, maybe if I actually value this, maybe it's worth me saying it too, or, acting on it and not just thinking about it or something.
Yeah. But you'd probably say it in a different way, and you know what, the power in you, I value a lot of like you just being quiet when everyone is fighting in the band and you're just like, I'm going to sit here silently. And then everyone's like, oh, what does Elliot have to say? Because it's just like, we've been arguing for like 30 minutes. And then it was like, because you choose not to speak up on all the things, people really listen when you do. And it's like, oh, I want to have that power too. But I guess that's a one. Okay.
Yeah, you have to resist. Well, I don't know. We all have our strengths and,
But people do really like stop listening. I mean, if you're always spouting off or you're always that person that's like telling, Mr. Right or sitting on your pedestal, it's like it gets annoying.
Right, but I'm saying I think you actually navigate that world of living your values without being what's the word I'm looking for? Obnoxious. Yeah, I was looking
I appreciate
I think you
that.
actually navigate that really well.
Yeah, I mean, because I can think of like, especially with like politics, it's like I have people in my family that are very right, and then I have people that are very left, and it's like even though maybe I would probably lean more to the left, it's like I have a lot of complicated feelings when it comes to politics, especially with my job and just seeing the way that things tear up. It's like no one knows what the answer is at this point, but like with my whether it's right or left, it's like when someone is so deep and I've been there, deep in like this is right and this is the belief, and it's like when I think about like presidents or like people to get and not to let me just go on a politics rant, but like I am very much like, how does this person come off? I mean, and obviously people can be really manipulative or like sleazy or whatever, but like, does this person seem like a good person? That's really like what I'm looking at. Like when I look at, I don't know where I was going with that, but with whether it's left or right, when someone is so like, there is no other way other than this, I'm like, and maybe that's me projecting like me not liking my oneness when I get really, this is right, this is wrong. And that's why Buddhism is, so interesting. Like there's no right and wrong. And like, how do you find this medium? Anyway, now I don't even know what we were talking about. I might have just created all that on my own. So
no, that's fine. No, it's good. Let's. I think I'm feeling that we've had a good conversation, pretty complete. Have we made any progress on whether Holly's a 1 or a 2?
Because you wanted to convince me after all this that I'm a 1. I mean, yeah, I would say like there's a lot of 1 in me that values. Like I could see that. It's just like I ultimately value the 2. I want to be like, I feel like life is meant to be serving like other people, but also like the 1 part of it is just like, well, this is the best way to help people.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. But truly, like the way you've been talking about 1s in this past however long, it's like, well, maybe I would have been more attuned to like being a 1.
Yeah. I mean, I think that can be a challenge, is that people read about the Enneagram types, and each type has struggles or a shadow side, and then they read about that. And it's like they're comparing apples to oranges, where they're comparing like the unhealthy aspects of the type that they don't want to be to like how the cool parts of like the type they might want to be.
I want to be cool. And 1s don't seem very cool. Like, I mean, they're cool in the fact that, they're going to stand up and they're not afraid. Like, I can say I'm brave. Like, I can say that, but
yeah. So
I don't think but people are often like maybe put off by me at times.
Let's read, I think to make a fair thing, and sometimes you read these like Enneagram type examples where they don't do a good job of distinguishing between unhealthy or healthy iterations of a type. I think one issue I actually have with a lot of Enneagram descriptions is they spend a lot of time describing like the unhealthy aspects or the unflattering aspects of any type. And then the last like sentence or paragraph is, but when they're kind of healthy and they figure stuff out, they can be like all right people. And sometimes people are a lot better at delineating the not great things about the types rather than, so I want to kind of level the playing field a bit here. And the Enneagram Institute outlines certain levels of health. So I want to kind of read a little bit about an unhealthy one, a medium one, and a healthy one, and do the same for two. Because I think it's important to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges when we're kind of doing some of these type considerations. And I think we'll probably end on that. So, all right, let's do it. All right, so unhealthy twos. We're going to take level 8 here. Unhealthy twos, very unhealthy twos.
Okay.
Can be domineering and coercive, feeling entitled to get anything they want from others, the repayment of old debts, money, sexual favors, etc. So it comes from this place of, I'm not lovable or you're not loving me as I wish you should. So I can use flattery, kind of manipulate, whatever. Like whatever I do is justified because you're not loving me, so I can at least try to use you kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's unhealthy two territory. More average two, become overly intimate and intrusive, need to be needed, so they hover, meddle, and control in the name of love. Want others to depend on them, give but expect a return, send double messages, enveloping and possessive, codependent, self-sacrificial person who can't do enough for others, wearing themselves out for everyone, creating needs for themselves to fulfill. Not super flattering there.
No.
All right. But the best twos, empathetic, compassionate, feeling for others, caring and concerned about their needs, thoughtful, warm-hearted, forgiving, and sincere. So that's where it's like, you relate to that, I'm sure, right?
I mean, yeah. But see,
But
maybe
do you relate to the journey that a two has to take to get there?
I mean, I don't know if it's a journey. Like, I think it's hard listening to those other things. 'Cause I think about like when I was in like serious relationships, like I could see some of those like, feeling like, oh, I need to be needed, or like I want certain things, and it's just like, like, so I don't want to say that like, oh, it's been this journey. Like, yes, I would love to be what you just read all the time.
Right.
But like, yeah, when you're not in a good place, like how did these other like ugly pieces come out?
So anyway, then here's kind of the parallel one journey, for lack of a better word.
But is it or is it just like, depending on what's being triggered, or like depending on, I just lost my job.
It's not journey in the sense of it's not perfectly linear.
Okay.
It's certainly not perfectly linear, and we cycle through these things. But I think as you become more aware of them, you spend less time in the unhealthy domains and learn to kind of yourself, you can't always stay in self-actualization or the tip, but you can get better at staying in there not spending all the time in, anyway. So here's the corollary, kind of one aspect of that. Become obsessive about imperfection and wrongdoings of others, although they may fall into contradictory actions, doing the opposite of what they preach. So that's kind of the unhealthy aspect of one. A more mid-tier thing may say, afraid of making a mistake, but everything must be consistent with their ideals, become orderly and well-organized, but can be impersonal, puritanical, emotionally constricted, rigidly keeping their feelings and impulses in check, etc. And then on the more healthy aspect, conscientious with strong convictions, a intense sense of right and wrong, personal, religious, moral values, wish to be rational, reasonable, self-disciplined, mature, moderate in all things, and even taking that a step further, become wise and discerning. By accepting what is, they become transcendentally realistic, humane, inspiring, and hopeful.
Okay, see, those I thought were a lot more, like even the unhealthy level was less so than this unhealthy too. Like, I mean, again, it's not apples to apples. Like, it's not about comparing, but I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe there's like icky like things that I'm like thinking about, like, oof. Like, anyway. But yeah, I mean, reading these, honestly, I'm like, no, maybe one's not so bad. But
yeah, maybe one's not. That's the title of the podcast.
maybe one's not so bad. Oh, there you go.
All right. Well, we'll leave it. We played a little mini game, of people guessing the Enneagram types of the band emails.
If they get it right, they can wear Kevin Bacon's shirt at the next show.
Yes. All right. So, well, thank you for joining. Thank you for talking truth, and we appreciate your honesty and
Talkin Truth,
openness to talking about your experience and all that. And I think it was value. Did you get value out of it?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I love this. Yeah.